Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first, I'd like to get a report from Mr. Perbola on the extracurricular.
I'm not sure if people can hear me.
Yeah, we can. He can't hear us, so.
Okay.
You can't hear?
Now I can hear.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'd like to just bring the board up to speed. The new regulations for capacities mentioned last week by the governor. We can go up to a 20% capacity, I believe, Todd, if that's correct. What we talked about at the extracurricular level and then administratively, we believe we have a good plan to propose tonight to the board because we will have to change our health and safety plan for extracurricular. And I think, Todd, you've got some data points, but I want to assure the board and the community that our plan is to remain focused on the kids and the parents and the students. So go ahead, Todd, if you don't mind.
So this Friday night's game had been identified as the band senior night. So we're really going to maximize. We have about I forget exactly how many, almost 680 some tickets to work with, with a 20% capacity. We're going to focus on all of our cheerleaders, our football players. They'll get 2 tickets each, as we have done in the past. We're going to offer tickets out to every band member. Will be able to attend underclassmen right up to seniors, and they will each get 2 tickets. Along with all of that, plus our players, we're going to be just about at capacity. So, but we really want to focus on getting
And the cheerleaders and the band, if they don't use the ticket, say if only one parent's going to go, just keep the ticket or give the ticket back to Mr. Bosher. We'll encourage them, students from the district, to go if they want to. Okay. And I think the other thing that we talked about, even though there are no more volleyball games, we're looking at a similar model for the gymnasiums for any future student activity or athletic event. But there's really nothing to talk about girls volleyball, so it's really for the remainder of maybe until the buildings and grounds. I know that they're going to talk about meeting, but we're not opening us to any other outside entity. It's all about the kids. So with that, does anybody have a problem with moving forward on that? We good?
Does that 20%, is that on top of the football players and stuff, or does that include?
No, it includes the players, the teams, the coaches, the officials. So math-wise, 20% of 3,400, 680 people.
Okay.
So with that, I guess, hearing no objection, Heather, we'll just have to make that adjustment to the plan. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
And we can, if you have to have official action on that, we can do it on Wednesday.
Okay. Yep, sure.
All right. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to our discussion about how can we bring the kids, students back more than what they are now. I know the board, and I've gotten, and I think the rest of the board as well, received a number of emails from a number of parents, other individuals. I'd like to thank everyone for being so respectful with your emails and complimentary. They all seem to acknowledge the work that the district, the teachers, the administration, the staff has all put into creating the hybrid plan that we have now. Most of them recognize that it's not what we would consider to be ideal. We would like to have, ideal is to be back to having everybody in the school without COVID issues. But I'd like to thank everybody for their input on that regard. Does any board member have any input that they'd like to provide tonight? Heather, do you have any,
I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix the audio for John, so I did not hear what you just said. So what did you just ask me?
do you have any options for us that you might be able to present? The ways we can bring back more, have the kids in school more than what they are now?
I can show you a limited amount of data.
I think that's a good starting point.
Okay. All right. John, can you hear all this feedback? You can hear feedback.
Yeah, I can hear the feedback. I'm not sure if am I able to be heard?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So maybe, first of all, board members, I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person. I happen to be traveling when the status of Indiana was changed. And so while we're working on that mic feedback, maybe I'll just say a few words because I could have a hard time hearing folks, and we'll just do the best we can. So I apologize that I can't be there in person. Phil, nod if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. So, we're working on a very tricky subject. So I had the opportunity to spend some time on a plane and trying to scope out my thoughts on this whole thing. As Phil had said, none of these options I think will be optimal. So we're trying to optimize a situation that there's not going to be an easy solution to. I've talked to several board members, on the side, just trying to kick around a few different ideas. And ultimately, as I think about where we are as a board and as a community, we've obviously, within the board had more disagreement, I think, over the past couple of weeks as we're trying to establish mask standards, how quickly we go back, what do those parameters look like. And ultimately, I think we're going to continue to struggle with where do we go on the best option unless we have a conversation around what's acceptable in terms of social distancing within our classroom. So, ultimately, we put a plan in place now that we're able to maintain that 6-foot distancing. But if we have more people come back, outside of having huge amounts of additional space come into our play, which I think is super unlikely, we're left with this scenario of saying, well, how many or what spacing is acceptable? And so weighing that risk of the health and safety with what that spacing looks like, I think will end up ultimately being the key thing in terms of whatever plan we can execute. As I look at what's happened, I personally believe that we're getting better at campus as we go. It's not unexpected. We have a completely new system with people doing this for the first time. So I've seen improvements over the last couple of weeks. It's definitely versus live instruction with everybody being back full time. To me, it's definitely suboptimal to that, but we've obviously seen improvements. The other thing, we started as a district to see some of the neighboring communities have problems. So ultimately, I think we want to consider, what that health and safety risk looks like in those neighboring communities versus what we're seeing here in Tunkhannock. I don't have an answer to this, but I think that we as a board need to do the best we can to recognize with our administrative and staff that we have also people working, as hard as they've ever worked to try to get the current solution as good as they possibly can have it. We've heard from a few teachers and staff members over the last few days, and I think that we have to be careful about whatever we do that doesn't put additional pressure on our staff members. Clearly we can do more, but we have to be careful about, as we start to move pieces of this puzzle, what other knockoff effects do we have on that? So I think ultimately we can listen. Looks like Heather's going to do some sort of a presentation, but I think ultimately we need to talk about what safety looks like and what we want to align on as a board, because unless we decide that, all the options are going to be, a little bit unknown.
That we have, what I want the community to understand is these will be the constants, right? We will continue to clean. We're not going to talk about a change in schedule because we need to deep clean. We are deep cleaning every single day. And so we will continue to screen students. We'll continue to follow the CDC guidelines, which right now is includes the mask order. So none of those things will change unless in the terms of the scenarios that I'm talking about, okay? So I just want to assure everybody that all of the health and safety measures that we've taken. Okay, will remain in place. There is no one on this faculty, there is no one on this board, there is no one in this administration who would deny the fact that if we could come back and have kids in front of us, that would be the very best thing for them. It would be the very best thing for their learning, their continuity of education, for their socialization. They could get immediate feedback from their teachers. There's no question about that. Absolutely zero. Nobody within this organization would argue that if we can do that, that's what we should do. If we can do it well, and we can do it in a manner in which people feel safe. I think it's that one. I'm going to turn it off. Okay, let's see. In terms of, maybe not, in terms of kids getting individual support and building relationships, we all agree. It's better for kids. It's better for teachers. On the other side, I have formative assessment that teachers can get feedback immediately from kids, can kind of see where they're at. It allows us to give common planning time to teachers, course writing for Canvas, which is critical and will remain critical, because remember, we have to be agile. We have to be able to go in and go out if necessary. And it also builds those relationships with kids. So at the end of this meeting, what I need to know is, what are our next steps? Where do you want to go as a board? What are your priorities? Then we need to gather the data that will help us to put together a plan that meets those priorities. And then I am going to ask you also, and I'm bringing this up tonight because I want you to know that it's coming, that one of the challenges that our teachers are facing right now, especially, I mean, they're facing the challenge at the high school as well, but K-6 teachers building content and actually getting that up on Canvas, that is taking up an awful lot of time, and we're finding with some of the challenges that we're having with substitutes and coverage that they're not able to get that time. And so one of the things that I would like the board to consider personally is making some changes to the calendar for some half days going into the November 11th date to give our teachers some time. And then if you would consider K-6 a 4-day week. So Friday would be virtual for them as well, which is similar to what other districts around us are doing. So just to kind of give everybody an update on enrollments, at the PC, now this is just K1 and 2. At the PC in town, we have 94 kids. At Mahoopany, we have 21 in kindergarten. Okay, so you can see the different columns, the Mahoopany PC and the primary PC that is located in Tunkhannock. Fusion C3, we have 29 kids. So in kindergarten altogether, there's 144 children. First grade, 94, 25, Fusion C3, 40, and so 159. The numbers speak for themselves, and you can figure out it's a pretty simple chart. So what I did is I asked our principals to give me some feedback on what the impacts would be if more than 50% of those children, of these guys, right, that are in the Fusion C3, right here, if 50% or more return to brick and mortar, okay, at the end of 9 weeks, what would happen? At the PC and it's not we can do this, right? We have Mahoopany, and that helps a lot. So at the PC, we would need 3 additional teachers, all right? If 50% of them came back, we'd need 3 additional teachers, which could impact losing the library STEM program and the career read aloud specials. The primary dean would have to go back into the classroom, and currently, our teacher that's teaching full-time learning support could no longer do that. She would no longer be available for full-time learning support. And there would not be a dedicated Fusion C3 second grade teacher. So for the kids that stayed in Fusion, all right, there would not be one teacher dedicated to them. So these are the impacts that we're thinking if half of those kids or more want to return. Also, we need to think about transportation. So some of the kids that are living in Tunkhannock might need to be transported to Mahoopany, because that is where the slots would be. And the implication of that is longer seat time on the bus. If we maintain social distance in the cafeteria, we may need to order more desks if we're going to stay with that model. So right now, the kids are sitting in desks. If you want to move them back to tables, again, it's not as good for social distancing, but otherwise we just need to order desks, that's all. Loss of time for content planning. We're already so short-staffed, and this would make us more short-staffed on arrival and dismissal, and also for coverage. If somebody needs to leave for a doctor's appointment, somebody has to call in sick, which again, we don't want them here if they're sick. We are stretched to the max already. At the IC. Hey, Todd, you got any water? Thanks. Oh. Hey, Todd. Carolyn gave me one. Every time I get up to talk, I have to cough. This is a good slide to have to be silent on because it's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you, Carolyn. At the IC, we have 100 kids in third grade, 101 kids at fourth, 111 at fifth, and 106. Those are actually kids that are in the building every day. And then you can see the Fusion C3 numbers. So last column is the total enrollment in those cohorts. So there's two slides on this one. If less than 50% returned, all the Fusion C3 teachers would become hybrid. All right, so in other words, they would teach in a classroom, brick and mortar, and then they would also teach sections online, but they'd still be responsible for developing content on Canvas. There would be no grade level common preps because it would basically require a split schedule in the IC. We'd need to identify additional recess spaces. We'd need to use the auxiliary gym for additional cafeteria space. We would be short-staffed for arrival, dismissal, and coverage. If more than 50% return, we're going to need 4 additional teachers. And so if we were to fill these positions internally, we'll lose the Canvas support teachers. We would lose the intermediate center dean of students, and we'd still be short 1 position. All Fusion C3 teachers would now become hybrid, so they would be brick and mortar and teaching Fusion C3 and still be responsible for developing content. Again, the rest of them are all just the same. So that's if 50% more or more return, it affects staffing. That's what I wanted you to see. 7th grade STEM Academy is a puzzle unto itself as far as numbers and just space. It's difficult. So if less than 50, so again, and here we're going to switch, all right? We have to make a paradigm switch here because K-6 are already going 5 days a week. What I'd like you to consider for the second marking period is going 4 days a week, but that's another topic. Now we're switching into the 7 through 12. Now these are the guys that are on the hybrid. They're in an A-B rotation, right? They're coming to school 2 days a week. So we would need 4 additional teachers. We would fill 1 position internally with one of the Canvas support teachers, and we'd still be short 3 positions. We would need to get more desks or some sort of table-like to use in the cafeteria. We'll need 6 to 7 additional classrooms if we change completely the hybrid model, where everybody's coming back 4 days. So there's no A-B cohort anymore. We're going to need 6 additional classrooms, and we will not have enough teachers to cover preps. Typically, those are special teachers, and we won't have enough. If more than 50% return, then we're going to need 6 additional teachers in 7th grade. We would need social distancing in the cafeteria, require more furniture, 8 to 9 additional classrooms. If we change completely from a hybrid model, so if we go completely from AB to 4 days a week, anybody that wants to come back, and we're still going to do social distancing, right? If that's the priority, then this is how it would affect us. The high school. Again, you guys can look at these numbers. This is how it looks right now. Bless you. Okay, if we go 4 days a week at the high school, depending on the number of children or students that come back, it's unlikely that we're going to be able to socially distance. And so, like, that's, again, it comes down to that issue. If we're in 4 days a week, the class sizes in some of the classrooms would be up to 30 kids. That is just the reality of the way it is. And there are some classes that are required and everybody has to take them. Right now, if you have a class of 30 kids, you've got 15 on day A and 15 on day B. So we're okay. But if we bring them all back, then we've got 30 kids in the classroom. So I spoke with the guidance office and I asked them to run the scenario for me, and they said, you know, if all of these Fusion C3 kids come back, some of them may, because of scheduling conflicts, etc., some of them may have to continue to take an English course online through their Fusion program. So in other words, those kids could go to a study hall, if we set up the auditorium, whatever, but they would have a period scheduled in their day where they wouldn't necessarily be able to be in front of a teacher, but they could continue with that class online. And that's a reality. So even if you come back, there may be some people that are going to have to take a course here and there online. Now the problem is our devices haven't arrived yet. Right now we're in the process of switching out our teachers' Chromebooks for the donated laptops that came from Williams. So we're working on getting more laptops, but the shipment of laptops so that every kid can have a Chromebook, that has not arrived yet. In this current scenario, right, we would have no supervision for 11 study halls in the current schedule, and that doesn't include any that we might add. No staff supervision for 2 lunch periods. The lunch periods are going to have 125 to 170 students. Grade 8 is going to need an additional section of each core class that we cannot cover internally. So that means we need another section of 8th grade math, of 8th grade English, of 8th grade social studies, and of 8th grade science. So these are some of the financial implications of some of the things that we've talked about. We need to increase the amount of masks that we order. If we chose to do anything with, like, you guys have seen these things, but they're like plexiglass, and you sit them around the desk. The problem at the high school is how do you carry them around safely? And so we didn't initially order them. Some school districts have gone with them. But it's a possibility. We're thinking that we would need additional staff, and that is not only on the teacher side, but also on the cafeteria and the para side. And additional desks, obviously. So without social distancing, the mask breaks become a little bit more challenging, as do the high school labs. And also we would be putting more kids on buses. And also, our substitute situation right now is just critical. And so I am making a public appeal to anyone that is watching this who has a bachelor's degree. You can be emergency certified to be a substitute teacher. We are desperate for help. It is, and once this thing starts spreading and people start getting sick, we are really stretched. All of my administrative team have been in classrooms all week. And the deans of students have been in classrooms all week. Our teachers are trying to cover. It's pretty tough. So I put this slide in because we want you to understand some of those staffing challenges that we're facing. Right now, we have 3 long-term sub positions open, and we have 1 candidate. We currently have 5 long-term subs that are filled. And that's because of people being on leave, that's because of people taking sabbaticals, and that is because of 1 mid-year retirement. And we have 5 anticipated leaves in early 2021 that we know of. So it's a pretty critical situation. So I pulled up what I could find on the data for Wyoming County. This is off of the Department of Health website, and this is, Shane, what was the name of that?
It's the alert dashboard.
Yeah.
I think this is the early alert
Yeah.
dashboard. There's a link when you go onto the Department of Health's website, click on the coronavirus link that they have. One of the subsections of data is an early warning system, I believe is what it's called. And when you go into that, you can filter by county, and that's what this data reflects. They do a week-on-week comparison, so you can see the dates. That's the most recent data that is posted on the list. We know that in Wyoming County there have been some changes, and that's the data that Heather has reflected on.
Yeah. So this is not, so this was updated last Thursday, and so I called EMA to get a more accurate number because we were waiting today for the Department of Health to update their website. So, but it appears to be updated every Thursday. So you can see in Wyoming County, we're doing pretty well, doing very well. And then what I did is I also pulled up data from the counties around us who are not doing as well. But still, it's just information. So some of the things that we've brainstormed around, I just want to run through these quick tonight because I don't want you to think that we are not trying to find solutions. We are to meet everybody's needs. So we've talked about modular classrooms. That would solve some of our space. It doesn't solve our staffing issues, but it does solve some of the space issues that we might face, like with the 7th graders. We've talked about having space off campus. I mean, we still have the Mahoopany building. We are utilizing some of that. There may be other options as well in the community to look at. I mentioned Mahoopany. We today, thanks to Angie Burke, we took another step and we actually did live streaming to see if that would work. We've stayed away from that, and I know that's a question I get from parents all the time is why can't we live stream all day long? And the reality is if you think about your internet connectivity in this area, and then we try to push out all of that live streaming from every classroom every day for 6 hours, I don't think it's going to work. But it today showed us, because Mrs. Burke was at home, and it showed us, that we can do this. So if we have a teacher that has to go out or a classroom that has to go out, every day we're learning. We're learning about what we're capable of. So we're talking about live streaming. But again, every kid has to have a device in order to do that. And right now we don't have the devices. We talked about 3 days in person, 1 day remote. And basically what this scenario is, and again, I can't promise you that this would work because we don't have the numbers. I don't know how many kids want to come back, right? I have no idea. So a 3 day in and 1 day remote could look like this. And this would primarily be 7 through 12. You would split up the kids that want to be here into 4 cohorts. Right now we have 2. Right? And again, so let's say we take 25% of them. And so, Bill, you're in cohort 1. Holly, you're in cohort 2. Bill, you're in cohort 3. And Phil, you're in cohort 4. On Monday, Bill's cohort stays home. That's 25% of the kids stay home. But 2, 3, and 4 are here. On Tuesday, cohort 2 stays home. But 1, 3, and 4 are here. On Wednesday, cohort 3 stays home. You get the idea. right? So it might work, but again, I don't know the numbers. So it's just something for us to consider in terms of the data that we have to. And we're open to other out-of-the-box thinking, certainly. I'm very open to ideas. I will emphasize again, though, I need numbers to be able to make any kind of a commitment that we can do it. That's it.
The that we would need to add teachers, is that to keep class sizes smaller?
Yes. Right. So if social distancing is not a priority, okay, then that scenario was based on social distancing.
Okay.
If you guys, right, are comfortable, but that's something we just need to communicate to parents, because there are going to be some kids and parents who are not comfortable if we can't continue to socially distance. So that's the trade-off. That is the variable.
So do you have an approximate financial amount of hiring all these teachers?
Well, I mean, it's like,
I have a ballpark figure in the back of my head.
Depends on the numbers.
It depends on the
But
numbers.
we need to get, what's your plan on getting numbers?
My plan, when I know how many kids want to come back, right? When we survey the students and their parents,
Okay.
then I will be able to tell you precisely what we would need. But in order to socially distance or to not.
Okay.
But understand, Lori, at least for the rest of this semester, even if you come back from Fusion C3, you still may have to take a class online. You still may have to. But we would find space for you to do that. Okay?
Well, I'll jump right in because I'm actually really excited by some of the stuff that you've shown us here tonight. I wasn't sure what to expect coming in, but I was not let down by administration's desire to find different options. So, like John had mentioned earlier, I also would receive lots of emails, individual phone calls, and individual messages, and from some people who might have a different viewpoint than mine, but it was a respectful conversation, and it allowed me to see some different perspectives.
Holly, is your mic on?
It's green.
Gotta get a little closer.
Yeah, because we can't hear you over here. And neither can Bert.
Do you want this one? It works.
Okay, I think I fixed it. IT right here. All right, so I was saying that I'm actually somewhat energized by some of the stuff that we were seeing because, and in full transparency, admin did come to the board last week, I believe it was, and said that they wanted to send out survey questions to try and get some better numbers. And from those on the board who did respond, the feeling was we should probably try and do some brainstorming and come up with some ideas of what options could look like so that we know what we're asking parents to weigh in on. Because there's a big difference for most people between just throw them back in school, 30 kids in a class with masks or without masks, who cares? And what we're doing now. So there's options in the middle. The plight of our teachers has been, I had already been hearing about it, but it became crystal clear over the last week or so that, as much as we as parents are seeing our hybrid students, I've been using the word hitting a wall on trying to do this type of learning. I believe that a lot of our teachers are doing a very good job, but they're also hitting their own wall. And it, in some ways, looks the same, and in some ways looks a little different, but it's equally as unenjoyable as what we're experiencing at home with our own kids. So I think a couple things that I had written down. I think we have two different issues that we're looking at up there. One is we had asked parents to commit to whatever option they were choosing for the first marking period, regardless if we change anything for the hybrid kids. So while what we do with the hybrid students is going to have an effect on what other parents decide to do in that trickle-down effect, we still also, as a board, need to realize that we need to have a plan, because if we change nothing with hybrid, you could still get back 50% or more of those primary kids. And we're still going to have to address those issues, and we're still going to have to address the transportation and the shortage of teachers. And that same issue for high school, same issue for the IC, even if nothing changes. So I do agree that the next step, I don't even know who I'm agreeing with, but I'm assuming other people, that one of the next steps is to try and come up with a couple ideas that we could then put in those survey questions to send out and say, okay, if we did something like this, would your kid be coming back? Would your kid be staying with the hybrid option? If we tried something like this, and if we had tried something like this, what's your limitations on what you want for your kid? Once we have those numbers, it'll be a whole lot easier to discuss what these options are. I mean, I had been I think one big step is going to be to try and find a way to do something synchronous. I was one of the biggest proponents for saying that we shouldn't do that because of family accessibility to the internet, to reliable devices, and these things. But that seems to be, so what I'm hearing when I talk to parents is not that there is, I don't want to diminish it, there is a concern that the kids aren't learning everything they should be at this point in time. But it's more or less sounds like a concern that even with the limited amount, they're getting maybe 30% of the instruction that they would have been accustomed to in previous years. They're in school maybe 40% of the time, but some of that time has to be spent helping kids with Canvas, because by the nature of the situation this year, there was not the ability to do this big training for these kids on how to use these programs. So when you're talking about, it's not even a matter of the kids aren't getting enough content. It's the content that they even are getting, they're struggling with. And the kids are struggling. It's not just that they're going to be getting less education. They're frustrated, and they're losing an interest in even talking about like what their challenges are with the current hybrid program. So I think we do, even if it was like that 3-in-1, if that's something that we think we might be able to do, if that's better, I feel, than what we're doing now. I don't even know if maybe there's something to be said for, getting kids in school in consecutive days versus the split. Like if it was, Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, for some continuity of, access and content and instruction, so that teachers don't have to spend the first couple minutes of the class just getting the kids back in line with what they're supposed to be working on. I came in here tonight knowing that the answer really probably wasn't as much as I want it to be, and I want it to be so badly. The answer just to be, bring the kids back, whoever wants to come back 4 days a week, and just let's make it happen. I know that my decision isn't just for me and my kids and my family. So the fact that we have other options out there, I think we should just put together, here's a couple little package ideas, then we can start getting the rest of the data and the information and the dollar signs that would go with whatever it is we're considering. Just like when we did the consolidation. That's my long-winded way of answering.
Thank you. Bill? Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on this. From a medical perspective, I think that we all have to understand that the administration, the teachers, the families, the community have been doing an outstanding job. We see all this stuff about COVID, and it is going to come to Tunkhannock. It's going to be here. We have a health and safety plan that is ready to go. I hope we don't use it, but the reality is, statistically, I think we're going to, okay? It's coming to the season now where there's going to be more people inside. And I got to be honest with you. I think when you walk to Walmart, when you go to Weiss Market, okay, and you go to other community settings, they're not practicing the safety that we are practicing in these buildings. That's my opinion, just from what I see. Secondly, the question I would ask administration, if we get a COVID case now, doing our hybrid in the high school, the same health and safety plan is going to come into effect whether we go 4 days a week. Am I right? The same health and safety plan kicks in.
We would follow the Department of Health's contact tracing, yes.
So it's the same, whether it's a 3-in-1, all 4, or all of the kids go 4 days and then the 1 day. And I understand about the staffing issue. From a medical perspective, the data right now in Wyoming County is we have no cases, but we're going to get them, and we have to mitigate that. But from a school board perspective, what I'm interested in is the educational value versus that risk. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So whatever happens in the next month or two, we're going to get more data. If we decide to go back with whatever plan we all come up with collectively, we know there's going to be more risk. And we're going to continue to practice the safe sanitizing, the masks. The thing that we can't practice, at least in the high school from what you're telling me, is to be 6 feet apart all the time. We're still going to be able to social distance because not every class is going to have 20 or 30 kids. There are going to be some classes that so we will be able to social distance at least part of the time. That's my understanding.
Yes, in some classrooms.
I understand, and I know that the ones that the kids have to take, those are the bigger ones, and I think we're going to have to problem solve on that because I believe for the safety and the well-being of it, I don't want to pack 30 kids into a room. I understand that, and I think we all understand that. But then the other perspective, and like Holly, I spoke to a lot of people. What is the current educational value? What's the current stress out there? Not only in the community and at home or with the kids, but also with the staff and the teachers. And I think that's what we're weighing here. At least that's what I'm weighing in on, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. I think the teachers, at least with my family, have been fantastic. They're answering texts at 9 o'clock at night. And I got to believe that's disruptive, but they're willing to work on that. And I would support that we look at a program to get these kids back in school based on the current data. Because the health and safety plan is going to be the same whether we're 4 days bricks and mortar or 2 and 2. We stay hybrid. When COVID comes, we've got our health and safety plan. We do our cleaning. And if we get a lot, then we shut down hybrid. Canvas is working. It's not the best, in my opinion, but it's working. There's no substitute, at least in my opinion, for the teachers, for the kids to raise their hand and ask the teacher the question. The lesson plan is the lesson plan. This has disrupted everybody. All the teachers, all the staff, all the administration, the families. I would just say that the current medical data right now supports that we move in the direction safely and as best we can, Heather, with everything. Hiring some more staff. We'd have to look at the numbers, and I know you want to come up with what's the questionnaire. But I think the community understands that there is a risk if these kids go back to 4. And I'm talking about 7 through 12 because I believe the K through 6 model is fine. I don't see that. And I understand there'll be some busing issues, but the reality is right now, based on our current data, and that's the decision we have to make. I believe that that's what you have to look at. You also have to look at, we've been doing other things since July. We've been having sports teams get together, cheerleading. We've been having these things, and we haven't had an outbreak, which is a great thing. So I believe the proof is in the pudding that what you've done administratively is working. And I believe, we've, as John Burke said, I know the board members had some difference of opinion about what mask. And I know we're going to have some difference of opinion about how to move forward. But I believe if we logically think it through, is it going to be perfect? No, it's not going to be perfect. But I believe the community has a clear understanding that there is a risk with moving forward. But I also believe that the educational value for the kids is going to be better. And that's what we're weighing here. So that's all I have to say.
Anybody else?
I don't know whether anybody's just going to, can you hear me, Phil?
Yes, go ahead.
If somebody else is going to go, does somebody else talk? Because I'm having a hard time hearing depending on where they are in the room.
Heather, I have a question. You mentioned the 3-in-1 model.
Yeah.
How would that classroom instruction work in that case? You got students that are there on Monday, come in on Tuesday. How are they getting the information that was taught on Monday?
They would be on campus.
So it would be streaming?
I don't know that we can stream that many classrooms effectively. I don't know what. Oh, there it goes. So I don't know. I don't know without having the numbers, but I mean, just in the first consideration of this, our thought would be that they would be online. I don't know if it would be synchronous or they would just be working from home. Again, this is a brand new idea. It's a brand new idea, and until I have the numbers, I can't really. I haven't wrapped my head around all of it.
You use some scenarios with Fusion 3 students coming back at some percentage, like 50%.
Yeah, that's what I estimated.
I guess I'm curious as to what it would look like if we just did not have them come back, but had high students converting to 4 days.
Yeah, so I also had the high school counseling office run me that scenario. If just the A and B cohort, we combined them for 4 days, and we didn't have Fusion C3 kids. So these were the consequences, the impacts of that would be we would be unable to do social distancing in some of the cohorts because some of those classrooms right now have 28 kids in the class, but it's okay right now because 14 are coming one day and 14 are coming the next day, so it's okay. The largest class would be 30 students. The lunch periods would still have between 125 and 170. We would still lose 2 lunch period supervision, and we would lose staff supervision for 11 study halls. So that was the impact of just combining A and B together.
Yeah, I mean, most of what I heard, when you're being told you need to wear a mask when you can't social distance, that's usually what you hear from the state. And anybody in school is required to wear a mask, period. So, I guess I'm coming back, are they saying that if you got a mask on, the social distance isn't quite as important?
The language says to the best of our ability. The language says to the best of our ability. Yes. So there are districts around us, some who have had outbreaks and some who have not, who are not able to do social distancing.
In your conversations with them, are they making an attempt?
I think they are where they can.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just based on the feedback that we've gotten from other vendors that are coming in and seeing what we're doing, and I think that we have taken steps that a lot of districts haven't taken, and they seem to be working. So just
Yeah, certainly from a cleaning standpoint, the feedback that we've received has been that we have implemented tools and technologies that are not necessarily being used in parallel in other districts. So where I think we have implemented layers of redundancy in an attempt to ensure that we have done everything that we can from a cleaning standpoint, I think that there are districts that maybe took one option or took the other option, but not necessarily both. And we've built that multi-layered approach in there, very specifically so that we knew that we had kind of this check and balance from a cleaning standpoint. And we've gotten favorable feedback. When we've had vendors come in here, they've made comments they've told our employees, our custodians, that they should feel good about the choices that their district has made to put the best tools in their hands. So to me, that's a plus. It doesn't mean that there's not always, room for us to continue to optimize, figure out how to do it better, smarter. But I do feel like from a cleaning standpoint, we are implementing all the right systems.
Heather, did you get feedback from the Fusion families, the parent, why they went with that, just because they didn't want their child in the bricks and mortar?
I think there's a mix. I think it's some of it was a mask. They didn't want their kids wearing masks all day, and some of it is just. I think for some parents they're like, okay, let's see how they do, right? Let's just see if they really can make this work or not. And then with the idea that I get calls, I want my kid to come back, and we have if students there have been some kids we've let back in that have some real educational challenges, and their parents have requested it. Right now, at the high school, if you call me and you say, I want my kid to come back, we have room. So I've been allowing some of the high school kids anybody that calls me. I had one father tell me the other night, no, I just want my kid on the list, but he's going to stay out the rest of the quarter. So, it's just, it varies. It varies.
And on your slides, I saw everything. Is there a feeling from you, your administrative team, the teachers,
how do you grade the educational value of what we've been doing so far? And would 4 days a week, and just look at the education of it, would 4 days a week be better?
Oh, nobody argues that, Bill. I said that in my slides.
But
Nobody argues that.
how do you grade that or quantify it? Is there a way to do that?
I think that everybody's trying to balance the health of our student body and the health of our faculty against that wish to come back. And that is the same thing that you're talking about with the rewards and the risks. And I think everybody's struggling with that, myself included.
And I hear you, and I'm gonna say something that may not be popular, but we have no cases in the district. We have 85 total cases since March in Wyoming County. That's the current data. Can it change? Absolutely.
And every school district, it changes.
I understand that.
So every school district, 1 week, there's no cases, and the next week, there is. So that's true of everything. Right?
Yeah. And with or without this change, our time is coming at some point.
Yeah.
You know, so, and we all know that. I'm trying to think what the number looked like with this Fusion C3. I think it jumped, what, like 200 kids when the mask thing changed? Something about like that?
I think it doubled, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the masks aren't going away. So I think for a lot of parents, if their option to go C3 was because of the masks, they're going to stay out. And I've actually not heard that they're having as much of a problem with the C3 as the hybrid kids are having. And I'm sure it's a little different, and there's, you know, different ways of how that works. So it doesn't seem like the majority of those parents are having an issue. Now, if the kids were to come back 4 days, you would bring some back. But I also think that there would be students that are in the hybrid now with 2 days that would leave because their parents don't want them in school if it can't be thoroughly socially distanced and all of those types of things. Where that balance is, I'm not sure, and that, you know, is something that's the kind of data we would need to get. But when we talked about the 15 students for social distancing in the classrooms, is that like the official like measure of what we think we can fit, or is that just an estimate? Like, is it 18? Is it 20?
No, that would be the max. Todd, did you set up a couple rooms?
Yeah, so when we set up our classrooms, we actually took a 6-foot stick and measured 6 feet apart, and we were able to fit 15 desks in a classroom with 6 feet from person to person. If you want to go down to the English hallway, I actually have this English hallway. Leonard can set up with 15, but I set up Mrs. Kandrovi's room with 25 desks in it, just by comparison. So if you want to stop by and see the difference between 15 and 25, that's a good visual.
Yeah, because I'd be interested in knowing, like, does that mean that it's 4 feet instead of 6 feet? Does that mean that it's 5 feet? Does that mean that it's 3 feet? It feels like I'm getting in the weeds on this, but it also feels like the data that's being released by CDC and things like that, some are saying that 6 feet isn't even enough anymore, you know?
So that's why we set up these rooms.
Okay.
So you guys could actually visually see it, and anybody else that wants to see it as well, of what a room with 25 looks like compared to a room with 15. And then you can kind of picture what a room with 30 would look like, because that's what the guidance office is telling me. And again, they don't have a crystal ball, but they're saying it could be that high.
The only other thing that I would add about that is, from a Department of Health standpoint, as soon as we drop below 6 foot of spacing, then from a contact tracing, it will definitely swing that net much wider in the event of a positive case. So right now, by maintaining that 6 foot of spacing, if we were to have a positive case, we keep the number of students that are affected by the potential for quarantining. Even though they may, you know, the risk may be minimal, it's a smaller number of kids, especially at the high school when you're switching classes. I think part of what we've seen happen in some of the surrounding districts where there's been a large number of kids that have ended up quarantined has been because that spacing is probably a little bit closer, and it has required them to quarantine more kids. So that's just something that I want to make sure, like, we're not getting any indication, while there may be differing data in terms of what the recommendations are in terms of spacing, pretty consistently as we have consulted with the Department of Health, they're saying 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes is still the industry standard that they're using when they're making a determination about quarantining.
Right, so if you're less than 6 feet, right, with or without a mask, for more than
Right.
15 minutes, you are considered a contact. That is our understanding.
Right. So
Well, then the easy solution is have the kids change seats every 10 minutes.
that might make it
I'm
worse.
joking.
Gotcha.
Tough crowd.
Anybody else on the board?
Phil, listen, can you hear me again?
Yes, yes.
I apologize again, people, I'm not there because I can hear Phil, Heather, Bill, but as other folks have talked, I can't hear what's going on. So I'll try to be brief because I'm probably repeating other things that other folks had said. I think Shane was talking about the contact tracing. So, if we get to a place where we're less than that, the only difference will be is we'll just have to shut down larger amounts of classrooms of the building versus the way we have it today. I still think the key for us, maybe we just need to gather this data as quickly as we can and come back with this group and talk about what those hybrid type of options are. If anything we've learned over time, we may not want to be the ones that go from exactly what we do today to a final end solution immediately. It's kind of a learning process because we are learning more as time goes on. I think Bill, you said this, we're going to have more data over the next couple of weeks. What do the caseloads look like and everything like that? If we understand, and I think that questionnaire, Heather, that you want to send, basically it's worded like something, do you want to come back if we cannot maintain 6-foot spacing at all times? So we have to figure out how we word that, get that data as quickly as we get it. If we have 25% of the population that wants to come back 4 days a week, it's a much different than 75%.
Right.
I just personally think going to 30 kids in a classroom doesn't make a whole lot of sense based on what we know now. The problem is once you break the 6-foot distance all day long, like Bill said, I'm not sure how much different it is whether you have 3-foot spacing, 4-foot, 5-foot, based on the number of kids you have, because you're going to have that. So it's kind of a gut feel of what this risk level is here, and we're not going to change people's mind on their view on this. If anything we've learned is, Bill, you're citing health and safety, and you and I have talked that, and I'm in complete alignment with the risk being low. But we're not going to change people's view on it. So if we relax that, we're going to lose a certain part of the population who goes virtual now. And so we're just trying to, I think, optimize a suboptimal situation. But until we have those numbers, I think it's difficult to plan what we do next year. And Holly, I couldn't hear anything you said. Lori, I didn't hear anything on your side. And I think Shana might have spoke. So if I repeated or disagreed, I'm just trying to keep up as best I can.
Thank you. Anybody from the public have thoughts?
I'm going to turn it on for you, Jeanette, because I think it's off. It's green. There you go.
I actually have a lot of thoughts and some questions. Because as a parent of a 7th grader and a high schooler, the Plus Portal, Canvas, tracking, what's done, what's not done, what has a grade, I have ended up in tears. And said, screw it, let them fail. I don't care. I can't do this anymore. I have a kid who's always at least passed, who's now failing the 7th grade. I have a high honor student who's passing, and I can't help them. We both have to work. So these kids are at home teaching themselves 3 days a week. And the last board meeting, it was said, well, it's interactive. There's discussion boards where they get to talk to other 7th or 8th graders. I'm sorry. So worst case scenario, my kids are teaching themselves 3 days a week, and best case scenario, they're being taught by other 7th and 8th graders. We can do better. I come home from work, I go to check their schoolwork, I can't figure out, one thing says it's due, one thing says it's not. You can't even track what the assignment was on Plus Portal over to Canvas because they don't even have the same names or the same grades. And then on Canvas, 1 second it says one thing's missing, you refresh the page, it says they're all missing. And I have screenshots of all of this because I swear to God, on Thursday, I'm like, I'm done with Tunkhannock. Me, who's never had a bad thing to say about this district. I'm done with Tunkhannock came out of my mouth. My kids will not be allowed to fail because we haven't done better. I've talked to Heather about other options. What we're doing isn't working, and I know you guys put a lot of work into this. I know you did. But this hybrid thing is not enough. If this is what we're going to do, we have to make it better. for these kids. Okay, well, we can't go through with having the kids in the school 4 days a week, 5 days a week, so they just have to stick with the hybrid and leave it like it is. And I would prefer to have my kids in school. Absolutely. I hear some of the things you're saying. Do I want my 8th grader in a class with 30 other kids? No, I really don't. So if that's the best that we can do, and 170 kids in the lunchroom, then no, I'd rather he stays hybrid. But that hybrid has to be better. And I'm not the only parent. The Facebook and the petition and parents are mad, guys. Parents are really mad. And I've talked to other people who have fantastically gifted children in this district who said they have a week and I'm pulling them out to go to cyber school. This is not an isolated thing. And I come up here normally so rational and not very blunt. And today I've said, you know what? No, you guys need to know in the dirt of it, in the everyday, in these family homes, this is ruining my children's self-esteem. It's ruining my desire to, or ability to help them. I'm a college-educated woman and I can't figure out your system. How do my 12-year-old and my 13-year-old do it? And I can't for the life of me understand, well, I kind of do, why we made K through 6 the priority. Why do they get to go to school every day, but my 7th through 12th graders don't? Okay, well, they're not old enough to stay home by themselves. I kind of get that. But I also get the 8th through 12th, these grades are counting towards their college. Now we're hurting them. What makes one more important than the other? We have all this extra space, and kindergarten through 6 is in 3 buildings because they're that important. But my 7th and 12th graders only get help and in-person learning 2 days a week. What does that say to me as the parent of that 7th and 8th grader? It says my kids aren't near as. So whether it's mobile classrooms for those classes in 7th through 12th that are going to have 30 kids so we can get it back down to 15, whether it's, and I don't, this is my question for you, Heather, because I keep hearing you say that the teachers are very stressed and they need that whole Friday for planning. But when we consolidated all the buildings, the teachers got planning time, more planning time and group planning time. So maybe I'm not understanding what is so much more difficult, that not only do they need that normal planning time, but they also need an entire Friday
because
to do
you want the 7 through 12 hybrid program to be better. That's why they need Fridays.
But we're a month and a half in and it's not better.
Okay, and we're 4 weeks into this, 5 weeks maybe. Okay, and I will say to you that different kids are having different experiences. I've offered for you, I've hooked you up with Annette Shreve or Debbie Johnson.
Yes.
You could make an appointment, bring your kids in, she'll sit with you, and she'll go through this with you and teach you how to use it. I mean, I feel as though our level of support, I have pulled out the stops in terms of trying to offer you this support. So it still stands.
And now I know where those grades can be found in Canvas, because before that Ms. Johnson called me, I couldn't even find the grades, honestly.
Right.
But the problem is they don't match.
Right, they don't match because the two systems are not talking to themselves like they promised us that they would.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Okay.
We're on the phone with Redeker and we're trying to get it fixed. They told us the two would interface. They don't interface. They're not playing well together, but we will fix it.
Okay.
It's being worked on.
And I'm not saying the school has not gone out of their way to help. We've tried to help Riley, my 7th grader, with great success, I would say so far. You had someone help me with the Canvas, but after the appointment with Ms. Johnson was when, it said that Riley had all these things missing, but you couldn't even find them to have him do them in Canvas. And then it was the science class, I want to say, that said he had all of his assignments done. And then my husband went to show it to me and it changed to within 2 minutes. Okay. The things were missing. Then they were all missing. How do I, as a parent, as a team player with you, make sure my kids are doing what they need to do on their self-instruction days when the information changes 3 times within 2 minutes?
So I have no idea why that happened, but I will assure you that I can have Debbie reach out to you again. We can set up time to even meet. I've had Annette and Debbie have both met with parents who are willing to come in, bring their kids in. They go to a conference room where they can sit around and have devices, and she walks them through this.
Okay.
I feel as though we've tried to provide the support. I feel like our teachers are working really hard. But in answer to your 4-day-a-week question, okay, it's because we're learning too. And we're trying to make this better. Our teachers, many of them, have a standard of quality. They're making themselves, a total stressed out wreck because they want it to be so good. And I'm sorry that it's not working out for you. But all I can do is try to help and try to teach you. Not me, because I don't know anything about it, but Debbie and Danette really do.
And I appreciate that, but I want you to know that I'm standing here as one parent, okay? Having talked and heard the opinions and read the opinions of over 300.
I would jump in to say that it's not about any one specific problem that somebody's having that Annette can just spend a couple minutes with them and fix. It's Jeanette's problems and situations that she's having are not unique to her because I'm having the same problems. And this parent and this parent,
Mr. Aurelio is the one who said a week and then he's done because he feels like he's given the district plenty of time and he hasn't seen any improvement. So my point is thank you for what you've done as a parent who reaches out constantly and is kind of a pain in your butt sometimes, I know. But there are hundreds of parents out there who are experiencing the same frustration, whose children are suffering just as much as mine, who don't reach out to the district, to the administration, they reach out to other parents. Not as helpful, but ultimately the district is responsible to all of the children.
Right.
And I know it's not just mine that are running into this.
Jeanette, the only thing I would say to that is, okay, those folks that are not reaching out to us, I promise you, I return every phone call that I get. A lot of times I'll leave a message and people won't call me back. But I return every single phone call. I stay here after hours to do that every single night. I've talked to you on the phone, right?
Yes, you did.
We do respond. And then we do try to help. But if parents are not reaching out, and if they're admiring the problem in their home, right, and they're not reaching out, I don't know how to help them. I don't know how to help them. Because we can't fix the problems that we don't know exist.
And that's why I'm trying to let you know that they're there.
I appreciate that.
And they're not just specific to me.
Yeah.
They're very broad stroke problems.
Right.
And if what I'm hearing is I've talked to a lot of people and I've talked to a lot of people and I've talked to a lot of people, but what I'm not hearing is a large number of them really feel like this is failing.
We are hearing that.
Okay.
I think the board already spoke about that, and I guess I just don't want to go back and forth. I know there's other people that
No, absolutely. I just want to make sure that I came up, explained to you where the concerns were, where maybe we're not getting all the pieces of the puzzle, and just ask you as a board, as administration, I understand it might cost more. I understand, but let's try to make sure that we're doing better, because speaking to the education value, we've lost a lot of it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can
I just talk from here? Okay.
John can hear you.
John may not be able to hear this, really. He's having technical difficulty.
I can hear her.
Oh, he can hear you.
Go ahead and let me talk.
What's that?
I want John to hear me because I might actually want to hear what John has to say, so I'll come on here.
Okay, first of all, I don't know a lot about the hybrid because my kids are doing Fusion C3, which surprised me because they're very social people. And I thought by this point they would want to be back in school, but they don't because they love it and they seem to be doing well. I have had a great response from teachers in 6th and 8th grade, our C3 teachers. It really, there were some things right at the beginning that seemed a little frustrating, but I made the kids figure it out on their own, and now they're successfully messaging their teachers and they're handling it on their own. I rarely look, I haven't looked in 2 weeks at what they've done, so maybe they're failing and I don't know, but I'm assuming somebody would let me know that. But we struggled at first with it because we were told in our orientation that everything would be on the to-do list and that's where it would be. And it's not on the to-do list. Some teachers use it, some teachers don't use it. It took some time to iron it out. I really would urge everyone to contact teachers directly, because asking Ms. Johnson or Mrs. Shreve, that's not going to be able to help you if an assignment comes up this morning, for example, my 6th grader. Well, this just came up now. I think it was Mr. Kreinberg even maybe. It says it was due yesterday and it just came up today. Well, then it really wasn't due yesterday. There's still a learning curve with the teachers as well. And I guess what I'm confused about is if C3 has been able to iron these things out with Canvas, how come the hybrid model seems to be in such need of repair? Can somebody explain to me who has a student actually dealing with this?
For a second?
Do we not have electronics? Are they, what are they doing on the day they're not in school is what I want to know.
Once you do reach out to the teachers and you figure out, every teacher will tell you, because it's not all on the to-do list. Some of it's in the module and some of it's on a to-do list. And we struggled in the beginning too. But once you figure it out, you reach out to the teacher, and I don't. It's not my thing. It's the kids' thing. They do it. So I make Brody reach out and do it himself. And he has to email the teacher and say, I can't find it. I don't. Or he asks them on a Monday and a Wednesday. And since we've gotten to the point where he has learned that he has to be the communicator and he has to be his own advocate, because I already went through 9th grade. I don't need to do it again. And once you do that and you let them figure it out, they know it. I mean, he has way more technological ability than I do. And I think the biggest thing is you kind of have to do it. Like, the kids have to talk to the teacher, and the teacher gives them a little bit more information. And it has definitely gotten better for us in the last, I'm going to say 2 weeks. It was rough going in the beginning. But it's new to everybody. And I mean, he had Canvas in 7th grade, so he already used it once.
Right.
So at least he had a little bit of Canvas knowledge, more so than some of the other kids. But once we started to reach out to the specific teachers and ask specific questions regarding that class, it has gotten better, at least on our standpoint, because some things aren't the same. And as far as the grades go, the teachers say, the Canvas grades, or some don't grade in Canvas and put them in Portal, but we get there. I mean, that's my personal opinion from a hybrid standpoint. I don't know what Fusion looks like, but we've gotten a lot better since we started reaching out specifically to a teacher and asking questions. They're very helpful. They're very responsive. And like you said, sometimes something comes up and it says it was due 3 days ago. Like, no, it's not. It just came up today. Like, right. Everybody has, that's my opinion. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has a different.
I had assumed going into it that the kids in the building would be at the advantage because they would have 2 days a week, that they'd have a human being right in front of them rather than online. So I guess, are we any closer to getting the Chromebooks? Do the kids 7 to 12 have electronics to use, or what's the status of that at this point?
So the Fusion kids were the ones that we distributed to first.
Right.
So right now we do not have enough Chromebooks except for the kids that don't have them. So we have had a few kids from the high school actually go out. Probably, Todd, how many in the last month?
20.
Yeah. Okay. So we provided them with Chromebooks if they didn't have them.
Okay.
In Mrs. Burke's class, we took over a set today, so they're in there. They're being wiped down in between every period. So we have enough to get by. But the shipment, we are hopeful, will be in before the end of October.
Okay.
That's where we are. And then everybody will have one. Everybody will have one.
Okay. Well, like Mrs. Arnold said when she started off earlier tonight, I'd love more than everything to see everybody come back and have it be normal, but that's obviously just not happening. And I would like to see us put our efforts into how do we improve with what we're doing now for those hybrid kids than to spend our time trying to crunch everybody into a building or get modular buildings or ship kids up to Mahoopany on a school bus. I mean, what good is that going to do? I watched you guys struggle for years, one thing after another. My kid's in 8th grade. I started coming to these board meetings when she was in kindergarten, and I keep saying on my way home, I get so frustrated because if you guys could just spend your time on education of the kids instead of all the other stuff, we'd all be so much better off. So I would love to see a way to just improve the hybrid model so that these kids can all succeed without having to crunch them all into a classroom.
And I'm not trying to speak for the board, but maybe that's the goal for the second department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this is what we have. How do we improve it? I don't. I kind of hearing them say that, like, once we get the data, set some priorities.
Okay. That's all I've got.
I think everybody is working on it. Like, we've started to have teachers do more like Loom videos or like YouTube videos. You can sit down if you want. I can still talk to you.
Right.
Or
Well,
like,
I didn't mean to insinuate that anyone
No.
isn't trying to improve.
No, but
And I have to say, I love the 6th grade teachers, Mrs. Ergot, Mr. Joseph, Mrs. Lewis. Shout out to them. The Zoom meetings they do Monday and Fridays, they're great. And they even added in an option for Wednesdays now for the kids. I'd love to see that for 8th grade as well, but I understand they're busy during the day. But it's great to have that interaction with the kids. But it's also disappointing when I see my kid log into her homeroom and only 2 other kids show up. I know there's more kids than that in the homeroom. So there's only so much they can do, but those teachers are still on there Monday, Wednesday, Friday to talk to the kids, whether they're going to have anybody interacting or not. So I know they're making the best of it. I didn't mean to sound like I didn't think they were trying. I just really hope that we're focusing in the right place and not spending too much time looking at too many other options, because Heather's presentation was like, kind of made me want to scream and say, stop spending so much time on that, because that all looks terrible. So that's all.
Sorry, Levi's, no, not that you did terrible, I'm gonna just give up. I clearly don't socialize very much anymore.
I have a follow-up question that I thought of, like, in the conversation. So, like, Shayna's talking about that. I talked to a couple of teachers today who also have kids in the district, and we were talking about the challenges that their kids have been having. You know, Jeanette talked about being a college-educated parent who has had some struggles and challenges with it. Shayna talked about how, you know, it took several weeks and some, you know, finagling. If these are the experiences that I like to think of all these people we just talked about as being capable and competent people who are engaged in our children's education and in their futures, what kind of monitoring do we have in place for the kids who don't have that? For the kids whose parents are never going to pick up the phone and call you because they have absolutely no idea what their kids are doing and they frankly do not give a crap.
And I do think too that progress reports just went out, and there will be some very surprised parents who have up to now believed that their children were very engaged in this, and they haven't been. But I will assure you that we are making every effort. The teachers make every single effort, and so does Dr. Carroll, to follow up on these kids. The counselors are making calls. I mean, and we're being really vigilant about and persistent about, look, we need you to get online. This is important. And so we do a lot of that. And I'll tell you that like in the spring, when I was telling people about our participation numbers, other educators, and our participation numbers were the 90th, you know, they were like above 90, it was because of our teachers, and it was because of our guidance counselors and our administrators that were just hounding these kids. And they may not have been doing everything, but if math was their favorite subject, they were doing math. And it was not great. But it was something that was just like thrust upon us, and we had to figure it out. So the same kinds of persistent follow-up is being done with these kids. Has it paid off? It has paid off. Do we still have kids that are not participating to the level that they should be? Yes, we're working on it. But you're right. There is a lot of variation in parent home.
Heather, I have a question. For the hybrid, when they're actually the 3 days at home, how are we taking attendance if they don't have an electronic to log on to campus?
They should.
So everybody should have that.
Yeah, and there is
Nobody has paper and pencil.
No. So kids that are in hybrid that needed a device at home have to be given a device.
So our paper and pencil option is gone.
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else?
So what are we doing next here?
Hold on, John.
We have somebody else from the audience that wants to speak.
So once that person speaks, then we just need to align on, are we sending out that survey? Because I really feel like we need data really quickly here before we do anything else.
Okay. Thank you, John.
So I have a somewhat, I guess, general question to start. Okay, let's say the state of emergency is flipped or it ends somehow. What does the end of this look like? when does this go back to normal? Because I refuse to believe that the kids having to wear masks, which isn't great for their health, having to miss being around their friends and people every day, which is also not good for their health. And the classes are not perfect, so their education is suffering. When does this go back to the real normal? Like, what has to happen? Like, what are we waiting for as parents to see in the news that's going to allow us to know that, okay, I have a senior. This kid has never brought home anything less than 100 in her entire life. This year, she's 90s across the board. She's crying almost every day. She's 100% stressed out over school. She's stressed out over friends. She's stressed out over prom. She's stressed out over all these things, which kids are normally stressed out over. I guess what I'm kind of looking for is something to give these kids some amount of hope that this is all going to end at some point. Like, what is it that needs to happen to change, to go back to where we were?
We don't have an answer for that. Nobody does. So I think what we're doing as a district, and anybody can jump in here, but it's a great question. We're waiting to see what happens now in these next few weeks to months. Everybody's worried about COVID. The medical data supports that when people get sick, they get better medicine now, and they have less of an illness severity. But that doesn't exclude people from worrying about COVID. So as I said, and I believe John Burke said, we're trying to balance within the next marking period. We're taking this in chunks of time. Okay? This is a virus that's never going to go away. We have a vaccine that's going to help. But right now, there is still concern out in the community. And I think what this board is trying to do, and what the administration is definitely trying to do, is balance the safety and improve the educational value. And I appreciate what you're saying about the angst and the depression and the stress, because the feedback I've gotten from people is exactly the same. But we can't make a willy-nilly decision on saying, the heck with it, let's just go back 5 days. We can't do that. And I believe what Heather and the administration and what everybody's trying to do is get data, how we can move in the direction so there is less stress and there's a better educational value. But there's no right or wrong answer where when COVID goes away, it goes to normal, because it's not going to.
I realize it's never going to go away.
Right.
Neither does the flu. But I guess the thing is, okay, let's say the state no longer says that you have to social distance. The state no longer says that all these things need to happen. And it comes down to basically just the school district's general liability that makes you keep doing these measures.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a possibility at some point for parents to be able to sign some type of a release that says, I'm less concerned about a virus with a 0.5% fatality rate versus the 10% damage that's being done to my child's education?
I think you bring up a great point. I will say that we have rules that we have to follow right now set by PDE and the governor.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to also be safe for the kids, the staff, the community. And how do we kind of blend that together? And that's why we have this meeting tonight. So, I mean, you bring up a great point. Me personally, I don't know when the end is. I mean, I get that question not only in the district, but outside the district. I think we're trying to make the right decision for everybody. Is it perfect? No. Is the education system right now perfect? Absolutely not. Because there's a lot of other things, like you said, the stress, depression, all the other stuff. But I think we're trying to, and Heather's trying to gather, and administratively, we're trying to gather more information from the public about how we move forward. And that's what Mr. Burke just said. We've got to come up with what is the questionnaire that we're going to ask the community so we get that feedback so she and the administrative team can make the right decision on staffing and maximizing the safety.
I can tell you that as a school board member and a parent, I absolutely don't believe that anything is actually going to get that much lighter as far as these restrictions go for probably the rest of the school year. When we were starting to make these plans, I think we all had this idea in the back of our head that, you know, the school will be, you know, we're doing this for the first quarter, and then we kind of expected things to lighten up by the second quarter, and we'd be talking about doing something. And as far as like state restrictions and things like that go, obviously we've seen no lessening of that. And now we're coming back into cold and flu season. I have no reason personally to believe that things are going to start trending better when the environment situation has changed. So I personally tried to prepare myself for the idea that the decisions we're making now aren't just till Christmas or aren't just till January 20th, because yes, we'll be tweaking or relooking, but I just don't see the state environment situation on COVID going away. I'm hopeful now for next school year. So it's not about just pushing through, you know, it's not about just pushing through the next couple of weeks as much as I personally think that it should be. That's just not the environment we're functioning in right now.
So you're in your opinion,
Personally,
as it stands right now, the kids will be wearing masks and doing this social distancing for the foreseeable future?
That's my personal opinion on what I expect to see. Not that I agree with, but that's what I expect to see.
But it's what the rules are.
But that's, I guess that was my main question, is if the rules change.
If the rules change, sure, we're willing to sit here and have a different conversation, absolutely.
So it's not 100% based on what the parents are afraid might happen. It's a lot of it is based on what's happening legally.
It's not even, there's an inherent risk when you go to Walmart, you can get the COVID. There's an inherent risk if you go to Weiss. So the reality is, I believe when people come to school, I believe those families have to understand that there's a risk that their child can be infected with COVID. The reality is, what we're trying to do here with the community and what our board and administration is doing, we want to maximize the safety as best we can. And that's what we're having the discussion about.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, I get that. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Have you guys compared grades from now until last year? Like if they dropped or anything like that?
Yeah, we know that a lot of the kids have their grades are dropped, yes.
So what are you going to do to fix that problem?
Well, we are trying to make the system better. And I believe our teachers are reaching out to parents. We have parent-teacher conferences coming up this week. That's the whole purpose of sending out progress reports. So we can catch it early and we can work with parents to help kids do better.
Well, up until last week, I had a kid who was always on a roll and had a 49 in one of his classes and was never reached out to about anybody. And had to spend 2 days trying to figure out why he was failing and how to get his grade up before progress reports went in.
Did you reach out to the teacher?
Once I found out what the problem was, because I didn't know how to check his grades.
Okay.
So how do you make everybody aware on how to do this?
How to check your grades?
Yeah.
And how to get into the portal?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, Mrs. Shreve is the person that I would hook you. If you called me, I would hook you up with Mrs. Shreve.
I've called you and I've emailed you.
Okay.
And got no response.
Your name?
Jeanette Pecoro.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Jeanette Pecoro.
I've
emailed you about other things too.
I'm going to tell you, I write down every single phone call that I get, and I make notes on returning it. So I'm not sure what happened, but I can show you everybody that's called me and whether or not I've spoken to them or I've left a message for them. So I apologize. I'm not sure. Are you using 836-3111
Yep.
extension 1000?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you give me your contact information after we leave, and I will give you a call tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Anybody else? Yes.
So I have a 7th grader in the STEM Academy and a 5th grader. My 7th grader is struggling. Up until this point, like other parents have said, he has been a straight A student. And now he's getting C's, B's, nothing like he has ever done before. We can't figure out the problem. He is definitely an in-class learner. He is struggling. So my question is there a way that you guys can work with these children that are having emotional and psychological problems with this? Because my child is crying every night. Every night. He's having anxiety attacks. He has been very well for the last year, and now he has developed a twitch. Things are not going well. And I know you've gone over this with other parents, but are there any kind of emotional or psychological things that you were willing to work with them on?
Absolutely. So what I want you to do is I want you to give your contact information to Mrs. Egan, and she will give you a call tomorrow morning, and she will walk you through how we can help. Absolutely. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Phil, I just want to say, it's not only here. I've been in contact with a teacher who has contacts at Abington and says we're so far ahead of them. And my son has 4 children, and they're struggling. They're all at home in North Carolina. And it's countrywide, it's just not here. I have a cousin who teaches in Buffalo, New York, who is struggling bad. Another one in Cherokee County in Georgia, where it's a total mess. And I know we hear this where we're struggling, but from what I understand, we are ahead of the game compared to a lot of areas in the country.
But still not where we want to be. So, you just brought up, Mr. Berg mentioned that we need more data. Administration was wanting to do a survey. I guess the question is, what questions do we want on that survey that will provide this the data that we need?
Well, I mean, I think a basic starting point would just be a question that says, if nothing changes, where do you expect your student to be educated in the second marking period? If nothing changed at all. And then, if you could drill down and have it be set up that different groups are getting different questions or whatever. But the next basic question would be, if we return to, 4 days in with, have that drastic option there that we've talked about. Like, if it was 4 days in, where will your student be educated second marking period? I think the question needs to be, where will your student be educated second marking period? And here are a couple of scenarios to picture for yourselves. Because then they can look at what those numbers look like. You can manipulate them by scenario.
Yeah, and can we put your PowerPoint online maybe, Heather, so people can see the facts in front of them when they're making that decision?
Yeah, we can put a link to the PowerPoint.
Even even if it's in the document or whatever, like just so they know enough, like to read through it and know exactly what they're looking at before they make that call.
Mary Jean's like the survey wizard, so.
Yeah, Mary Jean can figure. I don't know how to do it, but I bet you can.
I don't either, but we'll figure it out. That's a good idea.
Anybody else have thoughts on questions? They think
Is
we
this
should be
meeting
on?
on YouTube?
Yeah.
All right, so people will be able to go back and actually watch your presentation then? Okay.
Well, we'll make it even easier. We'll put a link.
Maybe we
Well,
can Facebook
sometimes I
it.
think hearing your words says more to people than just reading them off the presentation.
It's a good point. That's a good point.
So I'll ask the board members or anyone from the community, with the Fusion kids now, and Holly, you might know this better than I do anyway. Is it because the masks? Is that what we think, that the Fusion kids are staying home because of the mask issue?
Probably about half.
And I think that other parents just wanted to see how we were going to.
Okay. I think we're all in agreement that the current system is not working the best. I mean, at least the hybrid model. I heard from some parents they're happy with the Fusion. Okay. I think the hybrid model is not working. I'm not sure that we can just stay where we're at. And I know you want to get the data, Heather. I think the question is, if you're comfortable with Fusion, are you going to stay in Fusion? That would be some level of question. The second question is, if we go back 4 days per week, and I know that's what we had spoken about, tonight's the first time I heard the 3-1 model, but assuming it's a 4 days per week, knowing that we're going to maximize the health and the safety of the Tunkhannock community. Because the social distancing issue is important, but it's not the end all. The masks, because it's a respiratory virus, I believe are more important. The hand washing, the sanitizing, I believe that's really important, okay? And I believe that's the question. If we go 4 days a week, bricks and mortar, are you going to move your child from either fusion to 4 days, or the question I believe you asked before, are you likely to send your child back 4 days? In some fashion, that's the question that we have to get.
Right, but I think that there's two groups of parents. I think that there are those who would say, yes, because they're going to assume that we can do social distancing, and I can't promise that if a bunch come back. So we could ask the question two ways. We could say, look, do you want to come back 4 days? And do you want to come back 4 days even if we can't manage the social distancing 100% of the time? Because that's the variable. Bill, in my mind, that's the variable.
I think we'd ask that question.
Yeah, I'm fine with that question. I guess what it doesn't agree with me is the medical data that we're currently in. That's the problem that I have. I'll be brutally honest with you. Because there are no cases. We're making decisions on the possibility. That's what upsets me, I guess. Now, God will strike me dead because 2 weeks from now, we can have 20 cases. But I firmly believe that the kids get the best education in person when they raise their hand and they ask the question. In my experience, the hybrid is not, and I heard from other parents, the hybrid is not working the best. And I guess that's it. I just, you know how I feel. I'm more in favor of moving forward with the model of 4 days a week for the hybrid. The fusion kids, I know you need to have the data. How do we tweak that data from the community? That's the key.
Well, and one positive actually, Bill, is that if they ask the question and we find out, like we might find out that by going back 4 days, that's going to push a lot of kids into the C3 program and actually bring numbers down. Like that's always an option that's out there. So even by wording it that way, that I don't think we're ruling that option out yet. I just don't think we have enough numbers to know how feasible it is and to what degree it's going to limit a reasonable sense of social distancing. So I want to be clear in case I wasn't before that I'm not giving up on the idea of 4 days in. I just think we need to get more information because I think this could open the door. I mean, I'm thinking about even if it ended up being a 3-1, which again, 4 days is still my preference. If it ended up being a 3-1, kids are seeing their friends again. Like some of my son's best friends are in the opposite day. We're making arrangements on nights and weekends and stuff without masks or social distancing for them to hang out together because they miss each other and they're on Discord all the time to talk to each other and socialize. So I can see some benefits from that, but if we can collect data that says, you know what, there's a way we can do this for 4 days, or even at least that there's a way we can do this for some of the high-risk students, the 504 kids, the IEP kids, those kids, to get them in there for at least 4 days. And when that goes well, like, okay, guess what? Everybody's back in 4 days. I think that there's a plethora of options out there, but we just need the numbers to see what that looks like. So I don't think we're, in doing a survey, I don't think we're asking people to give up on that idea of 4 days.
Mr. Berg, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. So I missed everything that was just said. So if I repeat myself, I apologize.
Go ahead.
And so I could hear Bill and whoever talked after that. I got nothing. I would say that however we ask the question, because I know Heather, you were soliciting some input for that. I think we need to be clear, just because we want to avoid any misconceptions of expectations. The question should have some sort of wording around that. If you opt to bring your child back for more than they have today, whether it's 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, or whatever we end up deciding, that we will not be able to maintain 6 foot distancing throughout the entire day. Because what I don't want is people to say that and then they come back and they're like, well, it wasn't what I thought it was. And because I tried to do that sensing. So I agree with most of what Bill Perbola said, because the data is the data, but we're not going to get people are going to view that data in very different ways. And we as a school board aren't going to fix that. We can try to say, here's the number of cases and all this sort of stuff, but it's not going to change. The people that don't want to be in a crowd aren't going to want their child back. So I want to be clear with them, if we opt for 3 to 4 day instruction, that we will not be able to maintain 6 foot distancing. And we can debate, do they even need that, because I know that's some of your point of, like, with a mask, you really need 6 foot, 3 foot, 2 foot, whatever that happens to be. The Department of Health has 6 foot contact tracing with or without a mask currently, I believe. And so I want people to know, if they send their kid back, they need to know that that's the current setup, because I'm not going to be in favor of going off and trying to hire 20 teachers to do this, because we can't even get them. So, like, we could pretend we want to go do that, but we're not going to go hire those people because they're not available. We have 1 applicant for 3 long-term sub positions. So whatever solution it is, it's going to either be we stay with the current hybrid, or there's going to be some amount of, we're going to relax the current standards we currently have in place from the distance. So I think we need to be clear about that, because what I want people to stay out if they want to stay out. It actually makes this problem easier. And those that want to come back, we can look at how to mitigate those as best we can.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have the financial ability to hire the number of teachers that were outlined in the PowerPoint. That simply doesn't exist. We won't have the funds to pay them. So I think we have to work with what we have. There's some other ways that we can shield or those sorts of things. Those might be viable steps to take. I think we have to somehow work with the staffing that we have, as Mr. Burke said. If we want them, we can't get them. They don't exist. They're not applying. So anyways, do you have an idea on the questions? Do you need further input?
No, I think I captured what people said.
I have a question. Yeah. We are going to put it out for K to 6 too, right? Yeah. If we have other fusion kids, that impacts all that. Yeah. I just want to make sure it was a separate. We kind of get stuck on the hybrid part of it, but I just want to make sure we're doing those too.
No, we'll send those out. We'll put those out there. So,
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So it's a space thing, is what we're running into the most, right? A
It's
space
staff.
and
Staff, yes.
Because I was going to say, maybe we could have some sort of like community participation. I mean, there's a lot of places that are empty, and maybe somebody in the community would be willing to volunteer, that old grocery store up by Rite Aid or something, for extra space until we need it. But that doesn't solve the staff problem. So.
Yeah, and we're talking more, Jeanette, about how, and being very creative about, how to get more substances. So we do have some ideas on that, and because that's a problem that's not going to go away.
Right. So I was just thinking, if you could get that, that would maybe mitigate some of the finances of extra space, but we still need people there. So.
It's a staffing cost. That's what the dollars for. Okay.
So I want to make sure Jeanette hangs around for just a second so I can get your phone number, and anybody that wants to go look at those classrooms. Todd, what numbers are they?
I'll walk down the English hall with you.
Okay. So I just want to remind people of that.
Anybody have anything else?
I just wanted to ask about the sub situation. So even if all of a sudden we jumped our rates to like $120 a day, we're not doing that. But if we did, there still just aren't the subs out there to even take the jobs.
No, because these are long-term sub positions. These folks actually go right on the salary scale. So they make as much as a first-year teacher. And so we've had 2 special education positions posted, and we have no applicants. Now, Mary Jane has done a ton of work, and Shane, with the local universities. So do you want to just talk about that for 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've reached out to 4 universities, Marywood, Misericordia, 5 now, Kings, Wilkes, and Keystone. They have students that have to do field experience in student teaching. So we are going to bring them in by a grade level so we can contact trace. and they will be able to sub while they're getting their field experience time. So they'll be able to get paid if they sub, if they're here, we'll use them as a sub, and that'll be for the student teachers as well. So right now, I think we're probably going to put about 20 kids, probably in the month of October, November, starting in a couple of weeks, we hope, into our K-6 buildings at least.
So what that'll allow us to do is if we have somebody that calls in sick and we have that student teacher, for lack of a better word, we have that student teacher that's in that grade level, we'll be able to use that student teacher as a sub. There's one piece of legislation right now, and I look it up in my notes, but it's trying to relax some of the certification requirements for first-year teachers and for students that are seniors in their senior year. So, I mean, the work that Mary Jean has done on this and getting it together, and then Shane has also like gotten in there and said, these are our protocols, this is how we expect you to act, this is what you need to do in the morning, that kind of thing. The two of them have really taken that and run with it, and I don't know of any other district that's doing that. So I'm proud and I'm grateful to the work that and it was Mary Jean's idea. So good stuff.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else have anything else tonight?
No, I have another question. So, just an idea. The kids that aren't struggling with the hybrid could possibly stay on that schedule, but the kids that actually really want to do a full 4 days or 3 days, that may be struggling from last year to this year grade-wise, maybe if there was that option.
We could think about that, and that could be a...
And I know we can't separate students anymore from the old-fashioned high, average, low, whatever.
Right.
But with those high-end students that do like the hybrid, maybe there's an option that we could divide it.
That would be, we could capture that information in a question of the student.
Okay.
Good. That's a good idea, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Anybody else?
I have a question for the athletic,
Sure.
for Mr. Provola or Todd, though, before we adjourn. Going back to the athletic. For band, and what is Friday night is senior night for band?
Yes.
Just band or band and cheerleading?
No, cheerleading was done last week.
Okay, so who all do we have on the field now for band? Is it just seniors playing, or is it sophomore, junior, seniors?
With the governor's new, 20% guidelines, we have the capacity to have every band instrumentalist on the field and then celebrating senior night. And
Okay.
And every single instrumentalist gets 2 tickets for their parents.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's good news, definitely.
Yes, it is.
I guess nothing else. Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you for coming, everyone.